Okay. I hereby call the City Council meeting for February 8th to order. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Linda, roll call.
Councilmember Andrusik.
Here.
Councilmember Mercado.
Here.
Vice Mayor King.
Here.
And Mayor Sierra.
Here. Thank you very much. Do we have any reordering of the agenda tonight?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Like to change 2 and 3.
Public comments. This is your opportunity to have 3 minutes to say whatever you want to say. Compliments, complaints, ideas, anything on the agenda or not on the agenda. I do have one speaker slip for Richard Kusmich. Please step up.
All right. Thank you. Mayor and council members. My question, it just says crosswalk. A couple weeks ago, Ed mentioned about the crosswalk in front of the mobile home park and the flashing light. Well, down at Sycamore and 246, there's another sign for a crosswalk with a flashing light, but no striped line on the street. It seems if they put the lights up, there should be marking for where they want you to cross 246, but I don't understand why it's not there. That was my only question.
Thank you very much. Mark, did you want to answer that, or Rose?
Excuse me. We're not sure why in the past that there had not been a crosswalk installed there. There's different warrants that went through Caltrans at the time, but the city does have an active project for the crossing at 246 and Sycamore. That includes some bulb outs and some actual better flashers as far as warning pedestrian and vehicle warning lights out there. So that's in design right now, and that will include other pavement markings as well.
Could we get the crosswalk included in that?
Yes,
Okay.
I said there's pavement markings included with that.
Terrific. Thank you very much. I don't have any other speaker slips. Did anybody else want to get up and... Okay, I am closing public... Yes.
Can I respond to that?
Quickly, yes.
Yeah, the vehicle code technically says that a pedestrian has a right-of-way in a marked or unmarked crosswalk at an intersection. I mean, they are going to put some in there, but technically speaking, you still have the right-of-way whether it's lined or not.
Oh, okay. But yeah, my question was, you put that light down there in the button. Why didn't they mark it? I mean, it's more an area where kids are going to cross for the schools on the north side of town. And you'd think if you give them an area, stay within these lines, it would be better for them. Even.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's a dangerous situation. You're right. Okay, closing public comments. Moving on to the consent calendar. We have the minutes of January 25th, 2018 regular City Council meeting, and we have the list of claims to be approved and ratified for payment to date for fiscal year 2017-18. Councilman?
Madam Mayor, I'd move for approval of items 1 and 2.
All right.
Second.
Linda?
Okay, Councilmember Andrusik.
Aye.
Vice Mayor King.
Aye.
Councilmember Mercado.
Aye.
And Mayor Sierra.
Aye. Thank you very much. Presentations tonight?
No, ma'am.
Public hearings tonight?
No, ma'am.
Councilmember comments/items. Councilmember Mercado, any comments or items you'd like brought?
Not at this time.
Councilmember Andrusik.
I haven't. Nothing occurs to me.
Vice Mayor?
No, ma'am.
Okay. The only one I would like to bring up is that we have gone to RFPs for our engineering services. We've gone to RFPs for our trash services, and I would like an item brought back for discussion about an RFP for legal services. The services we have right now have been incredibly good. I consider ourselves very fortunate that we have a law firm that handles anything that might come up, which is kind of hard for a small town to contract with. But I don't think we've ever done an RFP since incorporation. And I just think with due diligence, we should do that.
Do you have a time frame for getting the discussion back on the agenda?
Within the next couple months.
Okay.
Is that agreeable?
Sounds fine.
Staff can do it.
Okay. And the only other item I have is, you probably have it under, I don't know if you have it under city manager reports, but our Park and Rec is having a big 10-year celebration Saturday from 1 to 3 with a bounce house and all kinds of goodies. So if you can swing by our Park and Rec Saturday from 1 to 3, it should be a really nice celebration. Moving on then. Any written comments?
No, ma'am?
Committee reports? Okay. Moving on to business items. It's going to be a really short meeting tonight.
Well, it wasn't a committee report, but I was going to report on the Channel Cities.
Oh, please
That's not a
do.
committee. but
Please do.
The Channel Cities
Our one councilman that
Division.
made it.
met last Friday in Thousand Oaks, and six of the 25 cities were not in attendance, but 19 were. The biggest thing going forward, they're all suffering from the economic downturn of the 101 corridor. So I think that's we all need to emphasize that we're back to we're less impacted than anyone else. But the keynote speaker was John Davies, who some of you probably have used him as a consultant. He handles helping people get their message out. And I think that was his statement. You are the message, and get it out. So it was a very good time to go. Didn't have the 5-hour drive we were going to have the week before. So it was. We promised we'd be there. I think it's Paso Robles is the next quarterly meeting.
Well, thank you very much for representing our city.
You're quite welcome.
It's very nice. Okay, moving on to business items, interview and possible appointment to fill city council seat. Linda?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. At the city council meeting of December 14th, Councilmember Reif announced that he was moving out of state and would be resigning from his council seat in January. The council agreed to accept applications for the vacant seat, and staff advertised the opening in the San Ynez Valley News and on the city's website. Staff received applications from Judith Dale, John Dorwin, and Shannon Sadecki. All are in the audience tonight. If an applicant is chosen tonight, the person will be sworn in prior to the February 22nd council meeting, and the appointment term will expire December 2020. Staff recommends that the council conduct application interviews and consider nomination to fill the vacant seat.
All righty. And Steve, did you want to add how the procedure as our legal representative, how we're going to go about doing this?
Sure. Well, we'll hear from each of the candidates. They'll get a chance to make their presentation, and then when that is finished, it'll come back to the council for nominations. And you don't have to vote immediately after a nomination is made. We'll wait till all the nominations have been made, and then we will go to a roll call vote, I think in the order that the nominations were made.
All righty. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, our first application, or our first applicant is Judith Dale. Step on up. We've had the applications a chance to review them, but if there's anything you want to add or
Oh, I would just like to say, first of all, it's great to have the opportunity to possibly be back on the council again. I've worked with 3 out of the 4 of you, and Art and I worked together on visioning. As I said in my application, I love Buellton. I was raised here. I feel a real affinity to the community. I feel that my experience in administration and my experience in leadership would serve the city well, and I feel I have something to contribute to sitting up there and representing the citizens of Buellton. So do you have any questions of me?
questions? You're busy writing. Any questions, Vice Mayor?
Go ahead, Art. Also, you want to start
Okay,
down?
I'll
Please.
start. This is a question I had a reading the Wall Street Journal the other day, and if you get a chance to be reappointed and you had a chance to do a do-over, what would your do-over be?
A do-over when I was on the council?
Yes.
Good question.
That's a great question. Probably the do-over might be to be a little more assertive in an Avenue of Flags specific plan, or as we were just kind of getting going on Avenue of the Flags. And a lot of controversy happened on that. Maybe I could have talked to more citizens and tried to come to more of a consensus. I think there's a group that's very happy with the Avenue of Flags specific plan and a group that's not very happy with Avenue of Flags specific plan. So I think that's something that I would like a do-over again, but it is what it is, and I'll certainly support our specific plan. That was one of the things that I put in my application. Another thing I would kind of like to have brought up, or maybe been a little more assertive on the architecture of the village commercial development. People say, how could you let that happen? They don't particularly like the architecture, but architecture is like art. It's some people like the Mona Lisa and some people don't. But I was told that had already been decided when I was on the council, so I really didn't take an active role in doing that. I think, too, Dave and I talked about and tried to bring up the traffic problems once all of, Avenue Flags and Crossroads and everything was developed, and it somewhat fell on deaf ears on our traffic engineers. I think I would have taken a little more assertive role, knowing that what I go through every day when I try to drive through Buellton, especially in the morning and in the evenings. That's probably the three things that just off the top of my head popped to mind.
That's good. Ed, did you have any questions?
I think that was a great question, and I appreciate your focus.
Yeah,
Because I
thank
think
you.
Avenue of Flags is sorely missing the attention we promised it for 20 years.
And actually, to be honest with you, I look forward to being involved and looking into that again, and maybe assuming a little bit more of a leadership role in how the avenue develops.
It seems fractured.
Vice Mayor? You said you had a question?
I have a couple of questions.
Good.
How do you view Buellton in 10 years?
In 10 years, I think Buellton should annex land to the north. I think that McMurray Road's going to be an issue. I really kind of don't want to see a great deal more residential development, but I see Buellton's strategic location as being unbelievably good for commerce, commercial, and light industrial, and possibly even business type development. As I say, I don't want to become a bedroom to Santa Barbara and Santa Maria. We wouldn't be a bedroom to Santa Maria anyway, because it's too expensive to live here compared to Santa Maria. But I don't want to see us becoming a bedroom to the South Coast. And I think, some people have that goal in mind, at least people in the South Coast, because they don't want more residential development either. I'm not saying no more residential development, but I think we need to be very, very careful that we don't become a bedroom community, because residential actually in the long run drains your city coffers, whereas commercial, light industrial, business development does not.
Why not go west?
We could develop to the west. I would just hate to see us sprawl out, because I think from what I've talked to people, the people that want to develop to the west want residential. And, I think we need to take more advantage of Highway 101. And annexing to the north, we could have a freeway business. And once again, I think we're in such a strategic location, not only county-wise but statewide, that we need to attract some government-type businesses and areas here that would be, convenient for everybody. We need to really build on our location, because we have 3 huge things going for us: location, location, location.
You mentioned in your last response to that question that this over here at the crossroads was in the works. Why didn't you ask that to come to council? Planning doesn't get blamed for things like that.
I did, and I was told that was done. It was finished, it was done. You and I both brought that up.
Right.
And, I think it's, looking back's always 20/20, and I don't want to sit here and whine about what was done, but the facade on McMurray Road, the back of those buildings that faces McMurray, probably I hear somebody every 2 weeks talk about what in the world was Buellton thinking, because McMurray's a major corridor, and that back door facade is just a straight wall up. It really does not enhance the aestheticness of our city.
Right. Okay.
So I agree. Both you and I did bring that up,
No.
and we were told that was already in the works and it was done.
And Caltrans was going to look at the traffic after the center was filled up, and now they have no desire to look
exactly.
at it. Exactly.
And the gentleman that talked about the crosswalk, that's been something we've all been working on. And, it's not only for the pedestrians to know where to walk, but at least for me, when I'm driving, if I see the stripes in the street, it kind of rings a bell that that's a crosswalk and there's possibly a pedestrian. It just is one more cue for the motorist to say, hey, there could be someone on the street crossing. Whereas a sign on the the side of the road, of course you see that, but it really doesn't say, whoa, there might be someone in the road. So I really would like to see us pressure Caltrans to get that striping in there. Because we've had 2 or 3 serious accidents crossing 246, especially at night. Yeah, so, and that is, certainly a corridor for seniors, and it's certainly a corridor for children going to the schools.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All righty.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you for considering me, and thank you to the other 2 candidates for applying.
We can't go wrong tonight.
Exactly.
Can't go
Exactly.
wrong tonight. All righty.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Our next candidate is John Dorwin. Please step up, sir.
I presume I have 3 minutes. I see the clock.
You got it. As much time as you want.
I remember a chamber dinner about 20 years ago when we had some people fly out from Minot for a dinner, and one of them was an industrial relations specialist. He said something that really impressed me. He said, the productivity of any organization depends upon shared values and shared perspectives. And he said, many cultures where everybody's on the same page and the same wavelength, they're incredibly productive because there's a sense of shared value and commitment to the shared values. And I think we have to go back and look at the Buellton brand, which we've been developing since 1992, and when we departed the tender embrace of the county and decided that, they weren't going to give us a specific plan, they were going to give us a community plan, whatever that is, and we decided no. We wanted to be independent, we wanted our own way, and we were going to get it. I think the Buellton brand revolves around beautification, quality of life, and living in a very special place. I got an email day before yesterday from a court reporter in Los Angeles who I was asking to prepare a transcript, and she said, "You live in Buellton. I'm so jealous." This is a gal who's pulling down a couple $100,000 working in the district court in the federal district courthouse in Los Angeles, and she wants to move to Buellton. I said to myself, I got to get this gal on the chamber mailing list. I have had over 30 years of private sector experience in real estate and real estate development, as well as general civil litigation. I speak developer. I've worked for developers in the South County. I've worked for developers in the North County. And I think I would bring a special skill set to the council of being able to tell you what the developer's motivation, really is when they come to you with a proposal, and when they get their experts to say what they want to say, and then you get a different project, the one you didn't expect as a result. I think there are ways to prevent that. I think there are measures we can take in the future with development agreements and with our growth that would avoid some of the architectural and aesthetic tragedies that have been visited upon our community. Your decision tonight is really very subjective. You've got 3 qualified candidates in front of you. I've known Judith for 50 years. We met at San Marcos back in 1969. I think it really comes down to your gut level intuition about who amongst us you can work with until the next election, and then who amongst us will work the best and contribute the most and complement the skill set of our next city council, the one that's going to serve out the term between November of this year and 2020. I think the big hole in this specific plan is control over the freeway corridor. I wasn't going to make any personal attacks tonight, but Caltrans isn't a person. They're a mindless, hydra-headed monster that needs to be dealt with, and the sooner we get to it, the better. A lot of our problems relate to a less than cooperative attitude with Caltrans. And in the words of Alphonse Capone, you get a lot more respect with a kind word and a gun than you do with just a kind word. I think we have to take a very much more proactive and aggressive attitude towards Caltrans. The part of the community plan, the specific plan, and maybe the plan has been oriented by the community as to what the community wants. I think we need to balance the equation and look at what the anchors are going to be. And I remember a conversation 20 years ago when I was on the chamber, and we had Steve Thompson come to the chamber when I was president and say, what does the community want? And we said, well, we want a major market, retail market. We want a major national drug chain, and we want a community event. And, it took Steve 3 to 5 years, but all those things came to fruition, and we now have a very balanced shopping center on one side of our community. The trick is going to be finding the anchors for the specific plan. That is going to be the real issue here. And I, got into the economics of it and started thinking, well, CVS is low volume, but it's high margin because you can make drugs for next to nothing, but you can charge whatever the market will bear. And the Albertsons is just the opposite. You've got a very low margin, but you got a very high volume. And if you get enough people going through there at 1% profit margin, it all works out. So the two anchors, if you will, really complement each other over there. And then we've got automotive, which has always been a big part of our scene with, high margin vehicle sales, retail and used vehicles, and then all the parts and service and the repairs and everything else. And that's also a high margin business with a lot of skills required. So I'm racking my brain saying, what can we do to get an anchor that makes sense for the specific plan? And I was up in Santa Maria the other day, and I was sitting next to Dick Weldon in court, and I said, Dick, what's going on at that Enos Ranch? Who's building a 4-story office building next to where the Costco is relocated to? and he turns to me and he says, "Oh, you mean the new Coast Hills Federal Credit Union building, where they're going to anchor their operation and then have all these offices around them that are going to create this financial food chain of engagement." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And I thought about it a little more, and I said, those guys are really our competition. I mean, you got Costco with that huge gas station there and all that signage on the freeway that says, buy your gas here on your way to LA. And how's that going to impact, Tom and our gas stations and our bottom line? And, we don't have that kind of signage to get people off the road and let them know, I'd like to see those signs that say, next service is 32 miles, bigger and better and more impressive, and maybe lit up at night, hey, this is your last chance, buy here. We live in very interesting times. We live in very complicated times. But if you would put me on the council, I think I would bring a different perspective to the problem and make a commitment to the community until 2020.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions? Art, Ed?
John, in your description, we talked about the melding. Our town has we have a designated workspace, so to speak. The urban growth boundary has precluded us from having someone come in and make an offer to give us this or give us that. So understanding that, I think the council has worked for years developing the marketing, doing what we do with what we have available to us. And I continue to be amazed at the productivity we've had through our visitor and hotel association and our gas sales. I'm sorry, people don't like gas stations, but the gas business is doing very well in Buellton. And I think it behooves us to have a visitor association / Chamber of Commerce actively working with the city, and we are doing that, but I just want to know if you feel that more can be done given the increase we've had, but we just had 8% in our last quarter. Our TOT went up. Other people, I think it was sales tax. I think it was sales tax this last quarter.
Sure, Ed. I think we can do better. I think there's room for incremental improvement. I was kind of shocked, pleasantly surprised when I looked at the chamber roster and saw Costco was a member. I saw we had double the number of members.
I don't think we want them to go. They're good members. That'd be good as a member.
So,
but I don't
we have double the members. When I was on the chamber as president, and I think it's important. I think you're looking down the line at a number of partnerships. The specific plan talks about a developer and P3 agreements, and you get the finance people involved, the lenders, the community, nonprofits. The chamber's a good place for all those people to come together and communicate and interact. So I think it's very valuable for our community. I agree with what Judith said about which way we ought to grow and how we ought to grow, because residential in the long term is a net loser from a revenue standpoint. You're going to pump a lot more money into infrastructure and maintenance of streets and sidewalks and the things residents want, as opposed to economic engines such as goods and services, retail. I think there's some real opportunities north of town, and I think from an infrastructure standpoint, we have some constraints. I think our physical plant for water and sewer it would be much easier, I believe, to expand to the north after we get the infill that we want under our general plan and we satisfy the constraints of the UBG. And I worked hard on that, and I think it was a good idea to prevent sprawl, which, you know, none of us, you know, want to live in the San Fernando Valley.
Well, I want to, I'll state the question that I had written down before, because it got a little off track. What is your focus regarding enhancing visitor and business advancements? And that was
I thought
what
about,
I meant to lay as a question for.
I thought about
you
two
to
things.
consider.
More and more, we're all moving onto the web, and visitors exposure tourism is no, you know, exception. I think we should have full motion video of Buellton. I think we should have drone shots of video. I think we can do a much better job of presenting our community as a destination tourist venue, and I think we can focus more on the multimedia and the inclusion of more Valley entities in our efforts. You know, our market is primarily Los Angeles, 2 hours away, getaway, motorized mugging. You know, get them off the freeway, get them some gas. Their car needs repairs, fine. They need an overnight, great. If, you know, and maybe if they can stay 2 or 3 days, you know. If you want to think outside the box, that Super Bowl commercial where they had the whole spoof about Dundee 2, and they were going to do a remake of the Dundee movie, and they put it out there and got everybody excited that they're going to be a remake, and it was just a tourism commercial for Australia. How about the Sideways 2 remake? You know, we do a spoof like that and get Paul Giamatti to, you know, make a commercial for us. How would that go over? Out of the box.
Outside the box.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, did you have any questions?
Yeah, John. What's your feelings on density bonuses?
On density?
Density bonuses.
Density bonuses.
And I'll ask a specific question if you'd like me to.
Please.
Or just your feelings on it. Okay, I'll ask you the specific question
Please.
then. If you give somebody a density bonus, it's kind of a quid pro quo. You have somebody build a bathroom for you, and by building that bathroom for you, then you violate your own city ordinances by giving more density, higher elevations, less parking, et cetera, et cetera. What are your feelings on that?
There is a break-even point. I remember working on a project up in Santa Maria off of Foster Road, and the city gave us something like 30 units to the acre. And we looked at that and we said, boy, this is going to really be unlivable. This is going to be very vertical, and this is going to be crazy. I think there's a trade-off point somewhere between 10 and 15 units to the acre where you get the density bonus and you really can't use it. On the other hand, there are employers who will want that density bonus and will build, you know, or try to build livability at 30 or 40 units to the acre. And, you know, I call these caves for slaves. I mean, you don't get very much that's livable. You get a lot of potential blight. And most of these projects are not built with quality materials. You're talking about a more short-term amortization that some employer of an entertainment facility at the other end of the valley will want, and maybe not necessarily look at, you know, what it's going to look like in 50 years, and amortize their investment accordingly. So I think that's a very subjective issue. I think that's a case-by-case issue, and I'm not really thrilled with high-density residential, with maybe a couple of exceptions for senior housing and group facilities where you're looking at a different mission and you're looking at a subsidized, not so retail environment. So something like Rona Barrett did with her foundation over there across from the high school and the YMCA, that's more my thinking of where high density ought to go. And you look at partnering with a nonprofit or somebody who's an employer and just, wants a dormitory, maybe a youth hostel, something like that would justify high density. But just developer, slam, bam, and scram, 30 to 40 units for the sake of 30 to 40 units and, selling it off to somebody else. Or what was the deal back then? Mapping as condos and renting as apartments, those kinds of things I'm not in favor of.
Okay. Oh, can I go ahead? On the Avenue of Flags, to get a developer to work with you, part of the strategic planning is to give not so much bonus density, but to do trade-offs. So in that aspect, with not so much residential, but more commercial, would you be in favor of something like that?
Yes, but I also think that there are some issues with the avenue that involve assembling viable parcels. I think you have to combine some parcels before you get enough square footage to where it starts to make sense in terms of rents and getting an anchor in there, and then the anchor's going to want to say, well, I'm an anchor, so I don't pay $1, $2, $3 square foot. I'm paying 75 cents a square foot for the next 25 years because I'm your anchor and I'm bringing my brand, whatever it is, Whole Foods or somebody else, to this community, and so I want a subsidy. So I look at the Avenue of the Flags and I say, you don't just look at what the developer wants to do. You look at the anchor who the developer is going to be putting there and how that fits with the community. And you look at it, as I said, from a different perspective. You look at it from the developer's perspective, but more importantly, from the anchor's perspective. What are you going to give up to get that anchor to make the financial commitment to put tens of millions of dollars in your community in capital improvements and then amortize them out over 30, 40 years, hopefully. There's nothing sadder than to have a shopping center and lose your anchor. I've been there, done that, and it has tragic consequences for a community. Example, moving Costco from where it was to where it is now at Enos Ranch, what has that done to the Santa Maria Mall? Santa Maria Mall was the economic engine for Santa Maria in the 70s and 80s. Now it's a ghost town. You got a food court at one end and a movie theater at the other end, and Sears is, what day is it? In bankruptcy or going that way? Not a pretty picture. And you've got all that space in the middle of your community. It was all done under redevelopment. It was all a great success. But that was 25 years ago. You got to think long term, and you got to say, is that anchor going to be there for the community?
Thank you.
I have two real quick ones. I'm sorry we've kept you up here so long. Judith, I think you got off easy. Just two very quick questions, if you can. First of all, I really like Dave's question, your 10-year forecast, what you'd like to see in 10 years. And in your application, you wrote a lot about parking districts, and I'm just curious where you think they should be and your why it was in here. I mean, but I'm sorry, because they are involved questions, but.
I think the days of, if you build it, they will come or, long past. I think you have to look at the critical infrastructure which will support balanced development and what the anchor wants to see. And one of the big criticisms for the old Costco there at Stoll was the parking was horrible and you had to run over pedestrians at Trader Joe's to get there. The circulation was just a disaster. So I think you're going to need a lot of parking to support some sort of retail anchor. And I think a district is the way to do it. I think I said before that Solvang has been a model in how to set up this parking bank, if you will, and then everybody has to buy in, and if you want to change a use or do something, you have to have an appropriate level of parking. If there's a tricky component to the avenue, and there is, because we're talking about an old freeway, we're talking about what Vince Evans managed to get Ronald Reagan to, give the community service district back in, 60 whatever it was. It's circulation followed by, parking. Where are we going to put these vehicles? And then, the plan says we want to keep them parked there for a while. We don't want them just stopping and going. We want them to stay parked so they can transact business. And so I look at it as an incremental process of how you analyze the problem and how you support the end use and the anchor's need for parking where they need it.
Okay, thank you. And 10-year forecast?
I think it all depends on financing. I'm talking to people in the business community who cannot get financing, institutional financing, to relocate, redevelop, reboot their businesses, in Buellton. I think the economy, in terms of the availability of capital to private sector, mom and pop operations, is still not so healthy. There's big money out there, but it's not for the folks who are running businesses in Buellton. It's for national chains and Fortune 500 companies. So I don't see us finished with infill and with our specific plan in 10 years. I see that as a more 20-year project, and I think it depends a great deal on, Caltrans. No personal attacks tonight. Caltrans not a person. They're the problem. We need to deal with how we're going to develop our north end from a strategic standpoint and look at those circulation options very carefully. And I think we get a lot of our traffic from the LA area. I'd like to see maybe some sort of a traffic study or a license plate reader or something that would tell us what proportion of our patronage comes from the south versus what comes from the north. And I think somebody really wants to have those statistics to attract an anchor, to say to an anchor, what's going on. And maybe we could do that as part of an economic development or even a parking district EIR. But we're looking at a problem that I call goodwill. Goodwill is the propensity of a business either to gain or maintain patronage. Buellton has a lot of goodwill. A lot of people want to come here and and do things. We need to identify who they are and where we can put them, and that to me is going to define the build out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Marcus, our chamber has those cameras.
They have the motion
They
loft.
have motion loft where they're tracking cars coming in
That's
from the
correct.
north and the south, but we haven't got plates yet.
That's correct.
I would suspect that you would be in violation of the
They're
vehicle code by getting into DMV records from a license plate reader. Steve? Because I know it's really hard.
I've looked at that issue, but only from law enforcement standpoint. I mean, in terms of setting up contracts with those types of companies that provide those services, it's really been just a police issue. So we haven't looked at it from the standpoint of whether or not it can be done from an economic development standpoint. We'd have to take a look at it.
But our lieutenant can also tell you that if one of us gave out information on somebody from a license plate,
That-
you would be
Yes,
prosecuted.
That would be
yes,
bad.
that is true.
That would be a bad
Police,
thing.
we don't let our police officers share that information.
Right.
Okay. Last but certainly not least, Shannon Sadecki. Step on up. Now you've had a chance to just listen to all this and got a leg up.
Hi. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm back. So I know that I stood before you and given you all my credentials prior. Just a quick back history of me. Buellton is my home. I invested here. In a week, I'll be living here for 29 years. And I've never, I love the cohesive feel of a small town, which I think is a huge draw for many families. I even feel that stronger as I raise my own child here, and I can look and want the best longevity and vitality for the city of Buellton for my son. I think that I have a different voice as a perspective from just a young, vibrant voice. There's many families that are raising children here, and I feel that I could provide a voice to be a platform for their perspectives to be heard. I have been teaching in Santa Barbara for 11 years as an environmental studies science, math, and science teacher. I'm vested. I have no desire to be in Santa Barbara because I absolutely love the city of Buellton. As far as you want me to kind of touch on some of your questions as I go along, because I know you guys asked a lot.
You might cut it down a little bit, yeah.
Okay. I think that Avenue Flags is going to be essential, and it has, as far as development, because I think it has a huge potential to meet everybody's personal, professional, and philanthropic needs. As far as in 10 years, I see that being a vibrant downtown, a central location, pedestrian friendly. I hear often from so many young families, we need more activities for our kids, we need more to do. I think it's important that we protect our rural landscape. High density residential is not necessarily the best bet without proper infrastructure in place, because I think it perpetuates this, it continuously perpetuates the problem that we have of traffic flow and congestion, and without the proper infrastructure, we're going to continue to run into that even more so without being able to sustain the population in numbers. It's just not quite possible right now. I do think that mixed use, mixed development is great, with keeping in mind that high density residential is a little slippery slope for a small town. Any specific questions?
Art, any questions?
That was, you answered a lot of them, because my question was going to be, take yourself away from being, you still be a teacher, but go to a civics mind and explain to your class on what's happening into the world today, but from perspective of what would happen here in Buellton.
What happened from, since incorporation in 1992 until now?
No, what your platform would be to tell us what your vision of Buellton would be.
Like I said, I think that a pedestrian-friendly Avenue Flags is important. Possibly an amphitheater, a civic arts center, arts and craft. I think all of those are in the works, and I think that needs to be done with time. We have time on our hands in order to do this with longevity and to make it right. I think that we really need to look at, developing the medians without, I know you mentioned density bonuses. That's also a slippery slope where you're able to violate a pre-established ordinances that, maybe it's not so advantageous to the whole. That can be kind of difficult at times. So I think that we really need to make sure that we're meeting the majority of our community's needs. And that, that's my biggest bet. I think I would love to see a Trader Joe's come into Buellton. I know that has a lot to do with rooftops. They strategically place, right? Yeah, and I've heard that. I'm well connected with our special needs community as well as our young families, and I can tell you often I hear the dietary needs of just families wanting to have organic, raw, whole food without breaking the bank and or going to new frontiers to solving. There are needs, and I think that I have the voice to be able to give that different perspective from a young family's standpoint.
Thank you. Ted?
Well, I think I've asked your assessment of how best could we achieve better economic vitality. We're taking in a lot of money, but we're spending a lot of money. Our forecast for expenditure is restricted because of the urban growth boundary. And I know we talked about going north, but that's a huge, that's eons away actually, because it's we have been precluded from managing our sphere. Our sphere is our city limits right now, for all intensive purposes.
Another 15 years.
And well, even it's longer. I think. Well, in 2025.
2025. Okay, so it's
But so, I think that's what I'm looking at. And if you look at our payroll, the amount of money, not payroll, but the kind of checks that we write for a town this size, it's pretty risky if we ever lost our economic hold that we have. We basically have tourism-related issues, but what I've been impressed with is the way the chamber and the city have worked together. I think the events that we have been co-supported by, we haven't set up barriers where certain people say, well, maybe certain people, but as a community we accept there are going to be events, as long as they're not all of the time. The river park was built to accommodate large gatherings, and we've heard from the adjoining properties that they really don't want to see them now. And I'm thinking, well, this last year I believe we confirmed that we spend a little over $300,000 a year to maintain the river park, and it's all for free. And you just don't want to, I think we need to realize what perhaps we're setting up. And I think economic vitality, I don't encourage, I don't favor the bonus densities. I think the wide open space, the avenue we're a blessed community. Anywhere you go, they talk about they wish they had that space between the businesses that will eventually be on Avenue of the Flags. Absolutely. Avenue of the Flags has taken it's taken a hiatus simply because everyone's waiting for some big developer to come in, and a developer cannot come in and accommodate all of the needs and still comply with the small town direction that the people, you live here because it's a small town. It would be a lot easier for you to live near your work, and I dare say everybody that commutes enjoys that. But there's going to come a day when we have to address how are we going to, we have an item coming up tonight, streetlights on Industrial Way, and there are two different paradigms to go down with that item, with that agenda item, and I just think we need, without our redevelopment that has been taken away from us. In the past we were able to dream big. The park was a dream with the fruits of future economic redevelopment revenue. Those have been taken away. So how can we best work with the cohesiveness of our council? The council is the business end of our community, but we need workers to, and visitors to support the people that are here in small portion. You know,
I agree.
Okay. And I think that was what I was looking for in expanding our council, and not just taking everything yes, no answer, but that we all get together. You know, the specific plan, we all say the community has developed this, has accepted the specific plan, and I think Judah, every person has recognized it's stalled, and we need to, by stalled I mean having someone, enticing someone to come in and do something. We talk about it, but we've got mixed emotions on just physically the Avenue of Flags, and I thought we were pretty clear about it 10 years ago, and it seems to have waned into not wanting to do it, but use it as a bargaining chip for high rises, and I don't like that, and a lot of people don't like it, but they don't want to come and say so.
Yeah. So. No, I do agree. I don't think that space is best used with high density. I don't. I do think that we need more community involvement and community voice to be on board, like you said, as a cohesive community, because we don't hear enough, and maybe that's part, in fact, to community education. You know, I don't know how many people have actually read it or seen it, to even have a voice on what they want there, because we hear it amongst one another, but yet do people come to the meetings and voice their opinions? Not necessarily. That's one part. I also do agree that the web and social media is a great platform for people to get information. However, you need to have a draw with that, because you don't want to put something out there, especially like you said for tourism, and it to fall flat because they come and there's not that big gusto draw that they wanted to see when they did their virtual tour, you know. Yeah,
That was the Lancaster group, right?
Exactly, yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. You know, and as far as leasing, you know, we could lease property in the medians. You know, that's another option that the city has. It doesn't have to be huge, big brand. It can be small mom and pop. We have arts and crafts. We have food. We have, like we said, amphitheater, pedestrian friendly. It can be vital still, and economic development, the future economic development, I think, can still maintain at the forefront, and while maintaining a small community.
Vice Mayor, any questions from you?
Do you know anything about smart growth?
I do.
What's your feeling?
I think smart growth goes hand in hand with smart, sustainable, balanced growth. I think all of those are synonymous. You have to have balanced growth with smart growth. The number of people, the infrastructure that we currently have in place, what we project that to be in the future, has to remain balanced with our population. Otherwise, it takes 20 minutes to get from one end of Buellton to the other, and that poses huge problems: circulation, traffic flow, infrastructure, waters. I mean, smart, sustainable is not always huge, high-density residential, I should say.
Well, that's what I've seen in a lot of big cities, and they've done smart growth, and I can understand that because they're trying to cut down on traffic congestion, et cetera, by people coming from long distances into the city to work. But
it's not balanced.
You're absolutely correct. If you try to do that in a town like this, it has to be smart growth. It can't be, let's shove a bunch of people in a small space just so they have a place to live.
I agree. And we all want to, I think, maintain the quality of life here, because that's what we value. And we all have to come together, like the council before us has said, that you have to have a cohesive value, and I think that is definitely one of them.
Right. And just let me ask you one more question. How do you think we can develop and maintain that small town character and charm of Buellton? I mean, it's almost ask and answered, but I'll just give you a chance to say, how do you think we can develop this town and still feel like it's a small town?
And develop it in terms of just economic development, continual population.
And residential development, and how can we still have like that small town feel?
I think mixed use is great, and I think that it's imperative that we add residential. I'm not saying that no growth whatsoever. You know, that's not the stance I'm coming from. But I do think it needs to be balanced with the infrastructure that is in place. I think we can do that by continuing to just keep in mind that we don't want to become the San Fernando Valley. And I think that by doing that, we can still add light residential, we can still add, light commercial, sorry about that. I'm sorry I'm falling short on this, but I truly think that our development has to come more of preserving what we have now and providing more availability for that, our rural landscape, our open space, activities, community involvement. I think that you can still develop while keeping all of those in mind.
And
a civic arts center would be huge for our town.
That would be nice. Then
I'm good.
You're okay? Okay, I had one quick question. I'm going to go back to Art's question to Judith. Since you got your degree in environmental studies with emphasis on urban planning and development, which is wonderful, you've been in our beautiful town for 28 years?
Yeah, next week it'll be 29.
29. A do-over. If you're looking at the city of Buellton, you've been here forever, you have a totally different mind than most of us. That's in a good way. What kind of do-over, what do you see that might have been done differently, that you would have done differently?
I think maybe Juliet Walk I would have done differently. I do. I think the setback there was...
That's why we ran.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, as I drive by it, it's not... I don't think it was in the city's best interest. I would love to do what's in the best interest for the community. I would like to spend the money of the city of Buellton as if it were my own, fiscally responsible. I'm dedicated. I'm a hard worker. I'll do my homework and whatever it takes just for the longevity and successfulness of the city of Buellton.
Thank you very much. Any last questions?
We're good.
All righty, we're
Thank
good. Thank
you.
you very much. Now, Steve, do I open this up?
To public
To the
comment?
public?
No.
Okay. So, basically, we have 3 incredibly well-qualified applicants and 1 spot to squeeze them all into. I will take nominations. I think I would nominate Judith Dale. My reason for that is that come November, there are going to be 4 council spots and a mayor, or 3 council spots and a mayor spot open, and I would like to think that we had somebody with experience sitting up here in case there's a major turnover. That's my logic. I also think either of the other 2 applicants would do a very good job. And there's 4 spots open in November.
And I would like to nominate Shannon Sudekian. And the reason is because I think Shannon's education and development and the direction that we're going right now would be a very good addition to the city council.
I believe that what we've been missing is a council directly involved with our Visitor Bureau / Chamber of Commerce, since they are our operating. They hold the events, they gather the people, they're motivated. We're very fortunate to have the limited staff they have. I'm not at all interested in growing their budget. I just would like to have some council, we've, from time to time, they hold mixers all year, and it's too bad that we don't have more people from our city government going to the events. Maybe I don't know. And I know timing is tough. Last week we had there was quarterly awards, or 2 weeks ago, and I've always enjoyed going there. I physically could not be there because of other commitments. So
It was a good lunch.
Our calendar and our world is shrinking. We're squeezing more and more things into every 52 weeks. And for that reason, I appreciated that John has been a president of the chamber. They look at it, they come from a different direction, and I think according to your rules that we've set up, there will be a vote on 3 people, and so I would not want to not have John have a seat at the
So you're nominating
I would
Mr.
like to-
Doran?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
So what the procedure would be is Linda would do a roll call for each of you, and you'd make who you would vote for. Art, I guess.
Yeah.
For me, I'd like to thank all 3 of you to begin with. I think all 3 of you are great, viable candidates. I've lived here in the Valley over 30 years, and I've seen the growth and the changes, and lived here in Buellton for over 25 years, and have seen the good changes, which are far greater than what the negative things are. And we have thoroughly enjoyed raising 2 children here, and we've been very, very fortunate to have my oldest daughter to be able to come back and live here, and has a good job. She has to commute to Santa Barbara, but she has a good job. But I think what's coming up on board in the next couple of years, development-wise, and I think strategic development, both on the Avenue of the Flag, on McMurray Road, Industrial Way. I'd like to see some expansion to the west. I think both west and the north would be advantageous to the city. I know we have our urban growth boundaries that we have some limitations until 2025, but I think in the next 5 to 10 years you're going to see, I especially think with the real market that's coming up across from Firestone, we're going to have some good development, and that prospect will be a good thing for us. And I think we need to have on board realistic views on what's to be developed. And so I would second the nomination of John Doran at this time.
Well, did you want to
No.
go down?
I think
Well,
it was just
technically, that we
So
still
we're
need to
just
take a
gonna
vote.
start
You need a
with
second?
the
Okay.
nominations, and then
Just-
you make your vote.
you would vote. They're, all 3 are
Plain in. Okay.
on the ballot.
All righty, Linda?
Could I plead my case one more time?
Yeah,
I
think so.
I like to say that Shannon, this is the second time Shannon has been in here, so obviously that she has a strong desire to be on this council. And we've heard this urban growth boundary, and there are people in this town that wanted that urban growth boundary, and now all of a sudden that they're recanting themselves, supposedly, and expanding beyond that. So I would really think that you should give somebody a chance that really has not flip-flopped on some very important issues.
Okay. And I appreciate that Judith Dale's been at these meetings, meeting after meeting after meeting. I do think we need to get some young blood on council, but I think at this time we need Judith. Anyway, go ahead and Linda, roll call.
Okay. For the first one, let's see. For Judith Dale, Mayor Sierra,
Aye.
Vice Mayor King,
No.
and Councilmember Mercado,
No.
and Councilmember Andrusik.
No.
Okay, the second one for Shannon Sadecki, Vice Mayor King,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Are we saying that Judith is out and we're down to 2, or are we just, you've already gotten my vote for Judith? I thought we were just going to go council member with who they were going for,
But you have that
That
consensus.
was-
and
the way it
then
was
there would
stated.
be a, yeah. That was the way I understood
You
it.
have to have a consensus on at least one of them.
We don't have, so why don't we do it this way? Why don't we start with Mayor Sierra? She made the first nominee.
With
and
Judith Dow.
And
And then you would go to the second
Yeah.
one and ask who he was for, and then Councilmember Andrusik and then Art Mercado. Each person votes, and whoever gets the most votes is,
That's what I was doing, wasn't I?
you
Yeah, I
went,
think-
well, you went one candidate by candidate.
well, it was just who you nominated, who the
Right.
person nominated. So I was just reiterating that, who the person nominated. So Dave nominated Shannon Sadecki. So that was your, right?
Right.
Okay. Are we on the same page?
No, you did
No.
a little different. You
No.
took a
What-
vote for
what-
Judith and now do a
No.
Why
vote
don't- why
for
don't-
Shannon.
Why don't we
So-
start with
I'm confused.
Mayor Sierra, and then I'll run down the line, and then you'll tell us who you voted for, or who you are voting for.
Right, so whoever gets
And
the
then-
2 votes.
Correct. So Mayor Sierra,
Judith Dell.
Vice Mayor King,
Shannon Sadecki.
Councilmember Andrusik,
John Dorwin.
and Councilmember Mercado.
John Dorman.
Okay. Congratulations. And ladies,
It's a little
November is coming. November is coming. Congratulations, John.
That was different.
That was different. Okay. Moving on. Discussion and direction regarding industrial way lighting. Ms. Hess?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. So I'm bringing back this item regarding industrial way lighting that we had brought previously in December. Pretty much the same staff report with a little further analysis of staff's interpolation of the estimates based on cost difference for the number of lights for the decorative features versus the Cobra Head standard lighting, so that council can provide direction as far as which way we want the design to continue through PG&E. As we mentioned before, recently PG&E had added different decorative featured lights available to the PG&E owned and maintained light fixtures that we could install in industrial way. Based on our interpolation, these are just estimates, by the way. The original design was for steel Cobra Head lights, which are estimated at a quantity of about 20, and it would be located on one side of the road. To do an equivalent using decorative lights, we would need approximately 30 decorative lights, so it would add about 50% the number of lights required. Difference in cost is really related just to the actual fixture installation themselves for the actual number of fixtures. So there would be a difference of about $100,000 in the cost for that. All the other costs, basic costs for design, general construction, etc., would remain the same. So that's the difference we're looking at here. So that's direction staff is looking for from council to see if you want to move forward with decorative lighting fixtures or if you want to continue with the standard Cobra Head lighting, which would be sufficient still to keep, to do what we need for industrial way.
Okay. Any questions for Rose?
I think it'd just be a comment because, oddly enough, coming back from Thousand Oaks, which is a newer urban area, I noticed an overpass, gorgeous, and the on page 41, the downhill, the down-facing lights were there. And I recall looking at them, and they weren't much further apart than the width of this room, or the length of this room. And I just, and when I read the staff report, I really think that we're spending way more money. We set out to create a safe walking environment on that industrial way. We've had these beautiful lights, and I liked what we put on the avenue in front, but in front of Rattlebank, a car jumped a curb and knocked one over, and it seemed like, wasn't it 6 to 8 months before we were able to even have a light back? It was a major inconvenience, and if they're required to be so close, and we don't have, I just don't. It's like, how can a person drive from here to Santa Maria and hit the oak tree when there's millions of acres of land to run off the road, and they get killed from that. So I don't know what it is, but maybe they're drawn to it for some reason, to the light, and they hit it, but I think it would be a tremendous, the expense isn't even close. It's so far apart. That's the reason I support the alternative of the Cobra lights, because that's industrial way. We have a sidewalk, and I drive down there a lot when I get off work, and I see people walking, and they're walking in the dark, and won't be long before there'll be muggings. And I'm sure we would have had the statistics if it was substantial, but we're getting more and more entertainment events on Industrial Way, and I think we need to be sure that we're as best lit as we can be for the dollar. And I guess if a property owner wanted to put these in, we wouldn't have an objection, but I don't see anybody coming forward to help us with this expense.
Okay, are there any other questions for Rose before I go to the public?
I guess I'd wanted to know, what do you think they've adequately put the distance? They were saying we would need 30 of them. I think in the staff
That
report.
was staff's estimate, because
Exactly.
PG&E hasn't designed them. Their basic original conceptual was, with 20
Give
of
us
the
the
other
money
lights.
amount.
So we were trying to interpolate based on the height, the light, output for the decorative lights in comparison. So that was our estimate. You need 30 compared to the 20.
So if you interpolated it, what was your distance? I mean,
Let me see. Well, see, and then also, I think we
I
had
guess
them.
that's,
I know it mattered. I apologize. I just.
They'd
if
be
you
more
wanna bring
frequently
it back,
closer,
if it's
right.
too much to do, but I would encourage we get moving with it and do the Cobra,
Right.
the Cobra light, just for the sake of getting something done, rather than we're approaching 2 years.
I guess my question would be, when will we get this information from PG&E? I mean, we're making decisions without any of the information. PG&E has not given us a cost estimate. We don't have, we have a guesstimate, which I appreciate, on what this would be, but
I don't know when we'll get the information from PG&E. They're looking from us a direction on how and what lights we want designed.
so we can't
I
tell
don't
them we
think they're
want to
going
go
be
with
giving
choice
us-
A or B, and they won't give us
Right.
both.
They're not going to give us a different, alternative scenarios. They want to know, city, what do you want built and designed, and we're going to go from there. So
Okay.
we're looking, when we did our estimate, we're looking at the distance of about 120 feet in between, as opposed to the 230 or so feet between every light in that distance.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I don't have any slips from the public. If anybody wanted to speak on this? Okay, then I bring Ms. Dale?
Yes. When I was on council, we discussed this, and I thought if PG&E put them in and we used the Cobra lights, that it was PG&E's expense. But if we went decorative, then it was the city's expense. Is that not the case?
No, it's to install all the lights, it will always be, at this point, the city's expense. The difference in, as far as expense would be in operations and maintenance. Cobra lights were always going to be PG&E owned and maintained, and at that time, decorative lights would be city-owned and maintained.
Okay.
And as of our December meeting,
Since
we
then.
had recently, just gotten information from PG&E at the time that says, oh, now we've got decorative light options that are PG&E owned and maintained.
Okay.
So that was where the question
Great.
became.
Then my recommendation would be that we wait and get PG&E's information before you make a decision. I think,
Except we have
But
this-
again,
we have to give them a
can't.
direction.
They need our direction on which way to go. They won't give us options.
They won't give us, if you do this, it'll cost this, and if you do this, it'll cost you that. They won't do that for us. We have to tell them which way we want to go, and then they'll tell us what it'll cost. And then at that point, if we decide we don't want to spend the money, then we have to pay them to go back and tell us what it would be with the Cobra lights. I mean,
Right,
if
it's
we
their-
went one way and decided to go the other way,
Right, it's their design time. It's not a
just silly.
consulting type service where we can look at alternatives. You know, we're doing an application for them to design the lights to be installed, and it's one direction.
Madam Mayor, could Judith, I think what turned my head around, and staff was offered, PG&E came down and took the 200 watt, whether 200 or 200 something was the lumens, and we went to 400, I think, or what are the little nodules that are up there?
With the LED?
LED, there were 4 LED versus 8 LED. And they put them on Avenue of the Flags, which would be at the south end, and that was for the comparison to show you what the different brightness of the, and it was very much improved. It was much brighter, and I think that's why we went with that. And then they came along, and they've still gone to certain areas they wouldn't put. They said you don't need that much light, because we have people that say we don't want them real bright. We
Right,
just want
right.
to be able to see where we're going. So I think that's. I'm just looking for the best lumens
For the buck.
for the buck, I guess. And I think this other could really be. I see it being, especially if a distance, if an analysis is, well, you've got your poles connection, you've got your terminuses too far apart, we're going to have to come in and install new terminuses to meet the needs of the decorative lighting. I think we're really we're spending money that could be better spent somewhere else.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that
okay.
was
Thank
the
you.
only reason I brought it up.
Anybody else? Mr. No? Okay. Then I bring it back to council. I do have to say, when I looked at this, my first thought was absolutely there's about $100,000 difference, and we should go with the Cobras. And then I started talking to people, and they said, you have budgeted the money for the decorative. It's a one-time deal. You're not going to ever be able to go back and change it. And most of the residents that I talked to wanted the decorative. So I get it that it's a one-time. We're going to put them in. We're not going to be changing them again. And
And to be fair, I haven't been able to see a downward decorative. I mean, we asked that be brought to us, but I have no idea how effective the downward decorative would be versus the Cobra. They look wonderful, but again, you know, we're also continually evaluated on how we spend money or where we spend
And
money that we have.
the other thing was that, you know, we've got a sheet of decoratives. Which one of the decoratives would we be moving forward with? The Contempo, the Spider Mount, the Memphis?
That would be at the discretion of council. Price-wise, they're all approximately the same. It's a matter of which your preference would be.
Oh.
Staff would recommend the downward teardrop.
The one that's on 41.
The Memphis
twin and single
LED.
picture?
Yes, the Memphis teardrop.
She's saying 40. Well, he's.
Yeah, I don't really think that fits in with industrial way. I think it's more of a,
Right.
yeah.
Well, now,
Okay,
those-
comments from council? Motions from council?
I
Art?
looking at all of them, they all look great. I just think at this time, you know, we're spending an extra $100,000 for lights that are going down on an industrial way, even though it's gotten to be heavily tourist. But I think they just want lights. They want to be able to see. And I would go toward the Cobra. I think I would go to the Cobra at this time. I just think it's an extra $100,000.
Is that your motion?
That's my comment.
Not really emotional.
You know,
We're
Really need-
just
you
giving
just a con-
direction.
just
Just giving
consensus.
direction. Okay, so Cobra, decorative.
I like the Memphis light. I like to go with that one.
decorative.
And which page is that on, Dave?
We need you up here, John Dorwin, or maybe not, I don't know.
Dave, where's the Memphis at? I
That's
don't,
on, those are the downward.
The figure
teardrop,
16?
The one teardrop.
Right.
that's
If
called,
you're, yeah, if you're looking,
And they're more flexible because you can put them up,
if you're
down,
looking
or
at
single.
page 35,
okay.
they've got all 6 of the decorative. I just think, yeah, this is a one-time deal. We're not going back, we're not, there's no redos here. It is, you know, we put
If-
money aside.
I think we just continue it to the next meeting. Because unless one of you is going to change.
I'm flexible. I can live with the lights. That's not the end of the world. So I would go with the the single fixture but twins. I think they would look better
Well,
on the Memphis.
if you did that, couldn't you space them farther apart too? If you went with, say, the diagram on page 41, the very last, the Memphis looking with the double.
We can work with PG&E to see what additional
I
features
can't,
we
I
could
mean,
do.
that would be
Because with the
brighter.
double, you'd have
Yeah.
someone who's walking on the curb or on the sidewalk be covered, and someone who's riding a bike on the street would have light.
Well, I believe they're not going to be double light because they're going to be facing north and south for the sake of the,
Right.
this, we wouldn't put them
Then we
east
go
and
see.
west because that would be lighting up.
But it would be twice the light on one pole.
Right.
Okay, so are we going towards decorative then?
Decorative then. That's fine.
But now,
Thank you.
color.
Oh, that can come back later. That can be more fun later down the line.
What was
Right
that?
now, they just needed to know whether we were going Cobra or decorative so that they could figure it out. And we are looking at
A double.
possibly the
You
double,
would like the double.
the Memphis, either a single or a double.
Madam Mayor, can you get some of those from someone?
I can ask them to
Physically get
see,
them to
well,
bring
I
them?
don't, well, I can ask.
Because there's 3 different colors involved in this.
Oh, as far as the color,
Right.
I see black or green.
There's a bronze.
I see black, green, and bronze.
Okay. I will ask.
Okay.
Very important. All righty. Thank you. Next, we're moving on to our appointment to the Central Management Area Committee for the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or the SGMA, and appointment of second alternate to Central Coast Water Authority, the CCWA. Ms. Hess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Member City Council. So as you are aware, the city is in a central management area with the San Ynez River Water Conservation District for groundwater management. As part of that role, they have a board that, for our central area, and they need a representative from our council to be on that board. We need a representative and an alternate as well. So that'll be the first committee. And then secondly, you'll be nominating for an appointment for a second alternate for the CCWA board as well.
Our first alternate is Art Mercado.
Correct.
First of all, any questions? Seems kind of basic. Does the public have anything to say about this? Bringing it back. I'd like to make a motion. For the first part anyway, Councilmember Andrasik has done an excellent job on the CCWA, rarely missing a meeting and very knowledgeable regarding water on our Central Coast. So I think we should appoint Councilmember Andrasik to the Central Management Area Committee for the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act.
And just a consensus, don't need a second.
All
or
good with
All
you
good.
guys?
I'm willing to do it.
All righty. Appointment of second alternate.
No, we need the first alternate
Oh, for that one
for the
too?
groundwater.
For that one.
I thought that was supposed for staff.
Is that,
No.
I
Change that.
can do it, or did you want to, since you're the first alternate for CCWA?
I thought, I'm
it
sorry,
was
but that's
first
what I thought.
alternate for the
I thought that was what it was.
SGMA.
was Having the same person be
We need an alternate for SGM.
misunderstood.
Okay, make sure they understand.
I was.
Oh, this
I
is
thought I
another
would go to
committee,
the-
yeah.
No,
No.
an alternate for the SJA.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
SGMA, yeah.
SGMA.
We need an alternate for that and a second alternate for CCWA.
Oh, okay, but who is the the person then that sits, is it Public Works? Or?
No, you're the representative. They just voted or just had the consensus. Now we need the alternate for that, for
In
you
case
on
you
that
can't make it.
board.
Okay. Were you?
I could do it, Art could do it.
I'll let you go. I'm just extremely busy during afternoons. I just,
Okay.
unless I gotta.
Good.
I'd be honored.
All right.
So Councilmember Andrusik and Mayor Sierra.
Thank you.
And the second alternate for CCWA, I've done that position before. Would it be okay if I were the second alternate
Absolutely
behind?
fine.
You should be able
Mr.
to
Mercado?
vote.
You have a yes on me.
Okay. We've got that taken care of. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are still working with Cameron and Associates to move up to Buellton on the Avenue. So we're still working with them and trying to get the
meeting went well?
The meeting went very well with the architecture. We had the building division there from the county to try to help them forward with design and the location of the building. And it's a mixed-use commercial office building.
Is
So-
it Second and Avenue?
That's
Where the gas
518,
station was.
right. Where the canopy used to be for, and the antique place and.
That was
The
amazing.
car
That's
wash
gone.
and
Yeah,
detail.
so we're moving forward. It was a very productive meeting, and I think they know where we want them to go with that. The hub will be at your next meeting. I'm sorry.
Do you have a guesstimate time frame for, I know certain things have to happen, could go wrong, but what do you, with your experience, what's your time frame for something being built there?
The problem is trying to get the consultants that they have to get the project right for the city. So that's what we're working on. We're hoping that our contract architect is working with him to help with the Art Deco architecture that he wasn't familiar with.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
I'm hoping within the next 3 or 4 months, we will be going to Planning Commission with that commercial office mixed-use project.
Oh, okay. So
Hopefully, and that's
could happen-
predicated.
you could have a project by the end of this year.
That's correct. The hub project will be at your city council meeting next meeting, and that's the industrial, commercial, and workforce housing project where the old racket club was next to the golf course. So that was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. The sheriff is going to be doing some extra patrols in different areas of the city this February, just because of some incidents that occurred in the city and some other things that have been brought up to our attention. So Lieutenant Shui is doing instructing deputies from different areas to come and do some extra patrols at different times of the day. State of the City is February 21st, so please sign up if you haven't. And you got a letter from Mr. Licken regarding the professionalism of our water department staff, Joe Grauer and Joe Meehan, minimizing the impact to the businesses and getting the water meter changed out. It was a plastic pipe, so it had to set a longer time with the glue before they could turn the water on. So they minimized the impact, and Steve wrote the nice letter for our staff.
That was very nice. Very, very
And
nice.
he's really the only person that took advantage of...
We have two.
Oh, you have another one?
We have another. I can't remember.
Solon.
Steve Sauer. Yeah, so those are the two we've had.
Good.
That's
That is it.
All righty. I adjourn this meeting. We'll see everybody back here the 22nd.